Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our weekly show right here on the internet. And this week I have a couple things for us to check out. And up first, I thought we would head to our uptown greenhouse and check in on the 2024 poinsettia crop. So the last time we looked at it, they were just little cuttings that had been stuck in soil and were starting to grow roots on them. Now they've been transplanted and they're out in the greenhouse where they're going to continue to grow until they're ready to ship out either to our stores or to our wholesale customers. So let's go check in on this year's poinsettias. Today I am here at our uptown greenhouse where we are growing our 2024 poinsettia crop. And right now it's the first part of October, and as you can see behind me, everything's still green. So over the next few months, the poinsettias will start to change color. So let's talk about that. The color change in poinsettias has everything to do with the sun and how much sunlight the poinsettias are getting. Or well, I should say lack thereof. The days getting shorter heading into fall and winter is what triggers poinsettias to change color. And they can either go to a red, pink, or white, or any sort of combination in between. So poinsettia leaves are called bracts. And when they change color, it really isn't a bloom at all on the poinsettias. It's actually the leaves. So if you have a poinsettia that you've overwintered at home, now is actually the time that you need to be exposing it to at least 14 hours of darkness a day in order to trigger it to change its color. I know a lot of folks call me and say, hey, I have this poinsettia that I've nursed through the winter and it never changed at Christmas. And that's because it wasn't exposed to enough darkness. So the other part of that equation is how long you need to expose your poinsettia to darkness. So it's 14 hours a day, but you need to do it for about 6 to 8 weeks. So if you start now, right around mid-November to Thanksgiving, should be enough time to trigger your poinsettia to change its color. And of course, we're doing it the natural way here, just with the regular day length starting to decrease. So the last tip when it comes to poinsettias is watering them. We use drip irrigation to water them because they really don't like to have their foliage wet. So watering them from below is best. The other benefit of not getting the leaves wet is that it prevents spots on the leaves. Of course, these are going to start changing color soon, and we'll definitely be revisiting them as they turn into a beautiful sea of red. Alright, so that is a quick update on our 2024 poinsettia crop. And as I said, it's just like mums. So mums are day length dependent. The days getting shorter going into fall is what triggers them to bloom. It's the same thing with poinsettias developing that red color in their leaves. So the color, it's dependent on how much red pigment there is. So if you have a lot of red pigment, you get a red poinsettia.
the less red pigment you have, you get down into shades of pink, all the way down to white, where there's no red pigment at all. And then you have different distributions of pigment. So you could get like the marble color poinsettias, where it's a red and white mixture. Um, but really, I mean, you're getting all that variation with just one color of pigment or the lack of that color of pigment, which is really interesting. Um, yeah, kind of geeking out on it here. Up next, I thought we would take a look at the weather. And right now, the weather is pretty stinking nice, actually. It's been nice and cool at nighttime, and we've got nice, sunny, 70-degree weather right now. Of course, we do have, and we've got the little warning up there at the top of the screen, Hurricane Milton down in the Gulf that's headed toward Florida, and just hope that, it either lessens in strength or changes course or something. Um, just, pray for the folks down in Florida. But right now it's 70 degrees and sunny here. If we take a look at the radar, I mean, the radar is clear for the area. Really don't have any precipitation at all in the area. If we look ahead at the forecast coming up, let me scroll down a bit here. So today we're in the 70s, low 41. Later this week, we do have a low of 37 there on, what day is that? On the 10th, which is, Thursday? So the temperatures are starting to drop, and next week on, on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, we have lows that are approaching freezing. So I would say, if not this week, next week we're probably going to have our first frost of the year. So you definitely need to keep that in mind and start preparing for that. And that kind of brings me to the next thing, and that is our podcast, the Keep Growing podcast. So you might have noticed, if you follow our podcast, there wasn't an episode this last Saturday with the start of October. And that's because we're going to start going to a once monthly podcast during the wintertime. With frost and everything and heading into winter, it doesn't make sense to do a weekly podcast on gardening tasks when there's not a whole lot of gardening tasks to be done. That being said, this time of year, there is a lot of stuff to do in the garden as far as getting your garden ready for winter. So it should be up tomorrow, October's episode of the podcast. Again, try to keep it around 5 minutes. It's a short little, nice little filler podcast. I love podcasts like that I can listen to while I'm doing like simple tasks. So I listen to a news podcast in the morning that's about 15 minutes long while I'm in the shower. So, but yeah, the October episode will be out tomorrow, and it is covering things to get your garden and your landscape ready for winter. A lot of simple tasks that we tend to forget about or go, ooh, I'll take care of that later. And then by the time later rolls around, it's too late. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that tomorrow. And with that, I'm going to head into our next segment, which is some tasks that I've been working on in my own landscape to get it ready for winter, and then also kind of give you a preview of some of the projects that I have that I'm going to be working on this winter in my own garden. So let's jump into that.
Hi, John Morgan here, and this morning I am out here in my landscape where I've been working to get it ready for winter. Right behind me here is my meadow garden that I basically let grow up into a hayfield during the spring and summertime. And it looked really good this year, but something that I like to do every fall is mow it down. So this last weekend, I went in with the riding lawnmower and mowed down the bulk of the field. And what that does is it kind of mulches it in place, and it really helps it kind of come back to life in the springtime, and I get just this beautiful sea of grass. There is one area though, there we go, right here behind me, that I left alone, and that's where I normally have my wildflowers. So let's take a closer look at it. So this past summer I had bought wildflower seed, but I didn't have a chance to plant it where I was helping take care of my dad. So I just kind of let it do its own thing, and I had these really beautiful native asters that came up. I forget what the exact species of plant is. I just know that they're in the aster family. But I left all of these to grow this weekend when I mowed off the field, and the pollinators just love them. There were bees and butterflies all over these this last weekend. But also I have this huge amount of growth here that came up that's just kind of ugly, for lack of a better word. But my plan is to kind of clear off most of this area. I'm probably going to leave these plants and kind of let them continue to grow like that. I think it actually makes, kind of unintentionally, a beautiful border around this area. Getting further out into here where I mowed, that was all grass. But then I have this, like, I don't know, 5 to 6 foot border of these beautiful flowers that I didn't really even intend to plant there. They just sort of self-seeded into this area. But I do have some things, like there's a gladiolus right here that was in some dirt that I just happened to dump into this area a couple years ago. I will leave that. And then I also had some wildflowers from previous years that had reseeded that came up in this area. So right here, we've got some heads from, I believe these were black-eyed Susans, that came back up. And hopefully they've reseeded in the area. But here in the fall is a great time to sow wildflower seeds. And then over on this side I have this patch of staghorn sumac that came up a few years ago. And I'm just letting it continue to grow. And it actually is turning into a nice little patch. At first I had some deer that were kind of attacking it, and rubbing their antlers on it in the fall, but eventually it kind of won out and took over. And I have noticed over the last few years, as I've been taking on this project with the meadow garden, that the number and variety of wildlife that have been visiting my yard has increased dramatically. The first few years, every time I would mow this area off and the front area over here, I would have a ton of voles in the yard. But eventually, something that I noticed is hawks coming into the area and start preying on the voles. So there's a fence post right here in the corner that kind of marks the property line, and I would notice a hawk sitting on it, watching the area, and then it would swoop down and grab a vole. So this year when I was mowing this off, I noticed a far less amount of voles in the area. Something that I also did while I was mowing is I made sure that I cleaned off my paths. So those are normally grassy walking paths through the meadow garden. And this area where I'm standing, I have future plans for a fire pit right here in this area. But eventually I want to build some structures out here. Of course, plant more trees. I've got an apple tree there. A pear tree that's not doing so hot over there. But I do want to add more fruit trees in and increase the variety of plants here. Another big project that I've started on, and actually did a previous video on these two beds, is reclaiming my garden, which, you know, this last year, for things that I had going on, I wasn't able to raise a garden, and the weeds very, very, very much took over. So this winter, a big project is going to be digging this out. Fortunately, most of the mulch, I've got to dig it up, and I'm probably just going to create a burn pile over here in the area where I normally grow my row crops. So yeah, this is definitely going to be an ongoing winter project. So the last thing that I kind of want to tackle going into next spring is, a few years ago, my neighbor planted this hedgerow of arborvitae, and it looks really beautiful. And further on down, right along my property line, I have this field. And what I would like to do is, it looks pretty good right here, but further down, it's kind of brushy. I would like to kind of hide all this. So my plan is to continue the row of arborvitae on down along the property line. I'm not sure exactly how I want to do it yet. As far as placement, I know I would like to also kind of create some divisions in the property, but I want to make it look more or less natural. Right here I kind of have a hard line that I have to deal with the property line, but over into the property itself, I want to make it look natural, and I want to kind of break up this line too, so it sort of blends. It's kind of a brain teaser as far as figuring that out, and that's something that I plan on working on this winter. As far as like I can use my drone and get kind of overhead shots of my property. I can also use Google Maps and kind of use that as a planning tool. So that's one of my other big wintertime projects that I have. And well, that is sort of a quick walk through my landscape heading into fall, and some of the projects that I have lined up that you'll probably definitely be seeing on here throughout this winter. You know, wintertime, it kind of seems like that you go inside and hibernate, but it's a great time to be doing a lot of gardening projects that are more structural and sort of have to deal with prepping land, cutting brush, that sort of thing. It's perfect time of year to do that. And well, the next time we're out here in the garden, I'll either be dealing with my wildflower patch or the garden over my shoulder here, but you'll definitely be coming along with me to do that.
Okay, so yeah, that is a look at my landscape and kind of the projects that I have going on. Of course, many of you know that the last couple years I was taking care of Dad, and a lot of stuff got pushed to the back burner. And now I'm trying to slowly dig myself out from under that pile of projects. Um, I didn't even go to the front yard because it's a disaster area right now. We had some concrete work done. Um, we also had an old chimney dismantled. So in the front where one of the flower beds was, it's literally filled with chunks of concrete right now. Um, so I spent a good chunk of Sunday actually pulling weeds out of that and cleaning it out so I can get dirt in it to plant pansies for the winter, so at least it looks a little bit presentable. Uh, but we just have so much junk from doing construction and remodeling that I think we're just going to bring in like a dumpster for like the concrete and that sort of stuff. Gloria, yeah, she says, I think you should plant some turnips. Hint, hint. Um, yeah, a few years ago, I planted turnips as a cover crop, and Gloria may have ended up with a bag of turnips. So, right now, where I had those planted, um, I just started mowing it off this year because I didn't have a chance to plant summer crops there. So right now it just looks like a chunk of yard. I'm going to basically be starting from square one with my row crop area in the garden. I've got to break out the tiller this fall, till that area up, and basically start from scratch with it. So unfortunately, I think it's already a little bit too late to plant turnips, to really get them to produce turnips by like November going into December. Yeah, she says yes, I did. They were so good. um, yeah, and if you do have a garden, turnips, they make an excellent cover crop. What I'm probably going to be doing is tilling up that area and then probably seeding it over with something like winter wheat. And that'll help start to rebuild that area where I've been just mowing grass on it all summer. I'm sure that's kind of depleted some of the nutrients in the area because I've been, the grass grows up, then I mow over it and blow that grass off. I'm blowing the nutrients away. Um, so by seeding winter wheat, it's helping to pull nitrogen back into the soil during the winter time. And then what I'll do this springtime is mow that off, leave all of those cuttings in place as a green mulch, and then till that under. So that way I'm adding a lot of nutrients and nitrogen back into the soil. So that's probably my plan going into this winter to help reset that area. Well, that is all that I have for this episode. I was going to turn around and look at my calendar to see what I have planned for next week. I don't have it right in front of me at the moment because I have the green screen pulled down. Let me jump over here. So next week, next week I have planned bringing the outdoors in. So we're probably going to be talking about bringing in house plants and different types of plants that you can bring from outside inside. And it is definitely the time to start doing that. If you have anything outside that's frost sensitive or cold sensitive, you want to start bringing it inside so it can get acclimated to growing indoors. Right here, directly in front of me, in front of our office, we have Kimberly ferns growing, and there was a little baby fern in with the Kimberly ferns, and I brought it inside and transplanted it, and it's actually doing halfway decent. So I might pull it over and talk about it next week. Well, that is all that I have for this week's episode of Bob's Live. So until next time, keep growing.